era stuff.
Yeah.
You look at Wilt's numbers,
Yeah.
there's a year that his numbers drop dramatically. And I'm really curious to see what players entered the league
Oh,
that
it's
returned.
so funny because I just posted Wilt's stat line like
Yeah,
yesterday.
that's what I was looking at. And I was
Yeah.
looking at that, right? And if you look at that, there's a point where it looks like, oh, did they start letting black people play and Wilt just became a dude?
Wait a minute. So I don't see any year. Well, I guess the only year you could be talking about is from a scoring standpoint.
Yeah.
When it went in 65, 66, he went from 33 and a half points to 24.
And then what is it after that? Every year,
It's 24.
right?
And then it went to 20 and a half, which was the first year he went to the Lakers. And then his next year with the Lakers, he got hurt. He only played 12 games, but he still averaged 27. And then his next year, he went to 20.7. And then the next year was 14.8.
This
And
is what I'm saying. It's like
but he was also getting older.
he wasn't that old. Look at
He,
Kareem's number when he's
he
older.
was like 34 at that time. And
That's
he was
not
still,
that old.
but then, and also he was playing for like the best team in the league. Like they
That's
had
fine.
everybody.
But what I'm saying is when you look at that early footage of Wilt, it's like barely a joke that he was playing against like chain smokers and
See,
janitors. Like,
I totally disagree with that. I mean,
dude,
okay, I shouldn't say totally. I think that this way too dismissive of him and the players. Then, like,
no.
where
So here,
those guys, like, I will admit, George Mikan's not an NBA player, and he didn't play against George Mikan. He's a little after him. George
yeah,
Mikan's not an NBA player today. Uh, Bob Pettit might barely be an NBA player today. He might barely be one, right? And I know some purists will scoff at me saying that, but I'm looking at a dude who is a 6'9" big, not extremely athletic, and you're 6'9", okay? Dude, you better be one heck of a stretch big. Yeah, I mean, you better be one heck of a shooter. So
that's it, and that's what I'm saying. It's like we're talking about if you just took Pascal Siakam and put him in 1963, he would be crazy.
I think so. Oh yeah, I think so. I think he would.
We
But
talk,
I don't see.
and
I
he's not
don't.
even an all-star right now.
I don't
Like,
know that he averages 50 a game though.
no, I'm. Here's the thing. My point isn't that Wilt is not great. What I'm saying is that those ginormous inflated numbers that we have no footage of are completely out of
No, no,
context.
there's a lot of footage of it
No,
though.
we don't have. Well, we don't have the footage of the 100 point game, and
No, not
we
that one.
don't and we don't have the footage of a lot of the games. Like once it starts to get to like later in the
It,
60s, we
I
have
would,
more of it.
I
But
would
there's
say,
a lot of Wilt's career that we don't have footage of. And
I
I'm not
would,
saying he didn't do it. I'm just saying that it's out of context.
well, I would say there's a YouTube channel called the Wilt Chamberlain Chronicles or something like that. It
Hmm.
has the largest library of Wilt Chamberlain footage. I mean, it's just like I've never seen this much Wilt Chamberlain stuff. Like, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on, and it's all different stuff, right? And I got a different level of respect for him after I watched that stuff because it wasn't just catch it, turn, drop, catch it, turn, drop. It wasn't, and a lot of people like they kind of make it seem like that's what he was doing. And it really wasn't that simple all the time. Like there were people who, I mean, he was shooting fadeaways, he was shooting hook shots, he was spinning in the lane. But true enough, I think the inflated numbers, and this should have been a segment. The inflated numbers,
Yeah.
because this is a real conversation that basketball people have, right? The inflated numbers to me are about his how far ahead of his time he was. To me, that's what it is. Like, I do think he was literally 15 to 20 years ahead of his time. And that's pretty freaking significant, to be 15 to 20 years
And
ahead of your time.
that's important. I would say maybe not. I mean, maybe it depends. When did Kareem get in the league?
69, 70,
And when did Wilt get in the league?
59, 60.
So he was
10
7 years.
years. About, yeah.
Well, but it was only because Kareem could have gotten the league earlier than that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying, are you
Yeah, I'm
still
here.
there?
It's acting
Okay.
weird, but I'm here.
Okay. Like once Kareem became NBA level talent,
Hmm.
Wilt's era of being ahead of his time is over,
Yeah,
right?
because yeah,
Because now
and Wilt
there's
and I actually Wilt even said that because Wilt was like,
yeah,
he was like, dude, this is the first dude that came along where I felt like I need help guarding him.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
but
So
there was Bill Russell, there was Walt Bellamy, but both of those guys were big time big men and big
here's the
time
thing:
scorers.
if I were to say that Wilt Chamberlain was overrated, and I'm not necessarily saying that, what I'm saying is we don't have as clear of a picture of Wilt Chamberlain as we do of, say, LeBron James, where we have every single dribble, important dribble recorded, and we can analyze every single play. And most importantly, we also have that for the people that he played against, right? We
Hmm.
also know when we compare him to Kobe Bryant, we are actually comparing real serious data from all of Kobe's life, all of LeBron's life, all of Dwayne Wade's life, all of Kevin Durant's life. When it comes to Wilt Chamberlain, we're discussing him without real, legit knowledge of the entire environment of every single game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
And
I get it. I get it. I guess my
but
thought of it.
here's the other point though. Will I'm not saying Will wouldn't be an all-star today. I'm not even saying he wouldn't be an MVP level player today. What I'm because he was a absolute freak athlete.
Hmm.
However, we're judging him against guys who played against freak athletes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Dwight Howard's career is real different when he has to play against a point guard like Russell Westbrook, a guy who's 6'3", 6'4". And it's funny, if you watch Westbrook standing next to Dennis Smith Jr., he's so much bigger than him, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
But a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", and can jump over you and snatch the ball out your hands at the peak of your jump. Like, Wilt did not have to deal with that. And I'm not talking about only Westbrook. That's why I brought Pascal Siakam up, because he's not even an all-star, right?
Hmm.
He might be an all-star one day, but
Yeah,
right
he's
now,
trending in that area, in that direction.
absolutely. But right now, he is at best, a third-tier NBA player, probably a fourth-tier NBA player, right? He is a good starter, which is below all.
I say this year he has graduated to a third tier guy.
Right. So, and that may be true. So if you have MVP, perennial all-star, inconsistent all-star, Pascal Siakam, right, is where he is right now, and he's trending to all-star. And that's just Pascal Siakam. You know what I'm saying? We're not even talking about Paul George, right? A guy who could jump over you, dribble between his legs, pass, defend. You know what I'm saying? Zion Williamson's on the way in the league. Like, when you're as athletic as Wilt was, and you're playing against people who would not even make it into, some of these guys wouldn't even be Division College One players right now. I don't think that's an exaggeration.
I think there's definitely were guys that were on teams that wouldn't
Yeah.
have been. Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm saying. So when you're Wilt and some guy gets subbed in, and he's basically he playing against you and me, we're not comparing them in equal. You know what I'm saying? In equal
Well, I
scenarios.
just here's what I think. I feel like I agree with that for the most part, but I just feel like to throw that up, to mention that when you're talking about like what he accomplished, I think it's unfair to him. And it's more unfair to him than it is to anybody else because he did what he was supposed to do,
Oh,
which
for
was
sure.
dominate
Be a
his era,
monster.
which
Yeah.
was dominate his era.
And
So when
yeah.
you start when somebody wins and then you start talking about, yeah, but you beat a bunch of it's impossible for that not to be disrespectful to the winner.
And see, that's the thing. That's not the argument that I'm making. The argument that I'm making is that when we have discussions now,
Hmm.
we have to acknowledge that and when you say, here's my top five, and somebody says, I'd rather have Shaq than Wilt. And then the answer might be, well, that's crazy because this is what I'm talking about. You saw Shaq, so you know what you're getting. When you talk about Wilt, You're just going by numbers, history, a few out of context highlights, hearsay, and a few games that we can all agree are so far below the current level it's not even funny. And this is the case of a lot of pre-merger NBA. And the one guy who really gets divorced from this entirely is Kareem, because he played so long post-merger NBA. And he
Mhm.
was so deep into Wilt's era and so deep into Magic and just at the beginning of Jordan's era that you can say with Kareem, this dude is crazy
Mhm.
because he's literally transcendental because he basically played in three eras of the NBA and dominated
But
throughout.
here's why you could probably give Wilt the same level of a nod, right? And this is actually a pretty fascinating thing because Kareem is the linchpin, right? Because there's clear footage of entire games of old Wilt playing head to head against young prime Lou Alcindor, prime Lou,
But
and
how old was Wilt though? How old
like
is old?
34, like right
That's
at the
not
end.
that old though.
But that's the end of his career, and that's clearly past his prime.
But he said he could have played longer.
He could have played longer, but there's no question he was not the same guy he was
But see,
athletically
and
in the
this is
60s.
of course. But here's the thing. This is my exact point. When your prime was against such lower competition,
But can't
and
you?
which let me just finish the statement. But when you're older, it's against high competition. We don't have the same clear vision of your prime versus your older as we do for the most extreme example, which is LeBron James, where we know literally everything about every single player he's ever played with and against from when he was 15 years old to right now. So
But you,
we can compare every minute of LeBron James to every other minute of LeBron James. Whereas with Wilt, there's a period where we have to honestly say, well, we don't really know what that was like outside of the fact that the guy was an Olympic level athlete. We know he was great, but I can't say that I know as much about that as I do about Shaq and Hakeem and Kareem and you know what I'm saying? And Joel
yeah.
Embiid. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like there is a certain like it. I mean, because people say the same thing about like young people are saying the same thing about Michael Jordan right now. Oh, he was playing against plumbers.
But see that's the thing. But we know they're wrong because we have the footage to prove it.
But but but
And we have the
but
players to prove
I'll
it.
be honest with you. Is Bill Lambier a good player today? Is he even in the league today?
Hold on. Jonas Valanciunas is playing in the league right now.
Jonas Valanciunas is bigger than Lambier and more athletic than Lambier.
Draymond Green is in the league right now.
Draymond Green is more athletic than Bill Lambier.
I can keep
Oh
going though.
yes,
No, no,
yes, he
no,
is.
no. What I'm saying is I can keep going with that though because you know who's not more athletic? Djokovic. He's not athletic at all.
Oh, Nikola
He's
Jokic. Yeah,
Jokic.
yeah. He's
He's
not more.
not.
But he's
Yeah,
much bigger. He's
but
much bigger.
I mean he's like 6'10". How tall is
I,
Bill?
they saying he's six. They saying Jokic is 6'11", I
He's
believe.
not six. He's not 6'11". He is
They
shorter than Kevin Durant.
okay, so they're saying Bill Lambier is 6'9". He's probably 6'8", 6'7".
Okay, but again, there are plenty of players in the league that Joe Harris, right? Like there are plenty of players in the league who are
But
not
dude,
stellar.
When Joe Harris in college, he was dunking guys. That's what
Okay,
blows me about him because he has completely changed his game. He was
yeah,
like Dan Marley.
I remember. I remember.
Yeah,
My
he
point
was
is this:
dunking guys.
because people say stupid stuff like, "Could Larry play in the league today?" There are plenty of Zach Randolph can't jump over a credit card, dude. Like there are plenty of non-athletic players in the league that. And here's the thing I've been saying the whole time about this, and this is the fact about Jordan's era. When the game is more of a contact game, strength is a stronger athletic trait than it is in today's game. But
Mhm.
even with that being said, strength is still an important trait in today's game. And when I talk about Dennis Smith Jr. and Zach LaVine versus guys like Russell Westbrook, that is the trait that we are talking about. It is strength and explosiveness. How high you jump matters less when you're not strong and you can't apply that jumping ability through contact. So that's why some guys dunk all the time in games, and some guys dunk on the fast break or when they're wide open. And that's my thing about Dennis Smith Jr. People are so fascinated by his jumping ability, but I don't know how much that will be a factor until he gets a lot stronger and is consistently penetrating to the basket and taking contact. It may be a huge factor. It might be like other players who occasionally do a fancy dunk, but really the other point guard skills are more important. So when people talk about Jordan, first of all, Jordan played against several players who played against several players today. He didn't play 100 years ago. Jordan, when he was 50 years old, was beating players who are in the league today in practice. It is not a completely different era from a talent standpoint. So back in the league back then, you're comparing 3-point shooting talent basically versus defensive, strength based rebounding talent, finishing around the rim talent. That's not a one-to-one comparison with Wilt Chamberlain, who you literally A, did not see a grand portion of his career, and B, when the merger happened, those guys were out of work. It's not like those guys persevered. And here's the thing, and it's the impolite part of the conversation. Once they started letting black people play basketball all the time, no matter what the circumstances were, you had less of these guys playing that he was playing against.
Yeah,
that was a barrier. That was a factor.
I mean, I like it. Like I said, it's not as if he wasn't playing against any blacks. And the other thing of it is once blacks started coming, even though he was older, when you look at the numbers that he put up, and I guess that was my whole point about Kareem and Kareem being a linchpin, is that if you look at it, man, the guy, for him to still be able to perform the way he performed in his mid-30s against a guy like Kareem, who was in his physical prime, to me gives me enough evidence to say, you know what? If this guy was younger, if he was 25, 26 in his physical prime, I have every reason to believe that he could be a great player somewhere close to
Hold up.
what he was then. That's my only thing. That's my only thing.
And
So I'm
this is
not.
my point, though. I'm not making the argument that Will is not a perennial all-star in whatever ever he plays with. I think every great player, for the most part, with only a few exceptions, you could drop them in any era and they'd be great.
And
There's
that's my point.
there's
That's pretty much my point.
and I'm not supposed. What I'm saying is, Will has the benefit of basically prehistoric mythology attached to his greatness, and people talk, and that's okay because he earned that. But what I'm saying is, you have to acknowledge that when you're talking. You can't talk about it as if you were there, as if you were literally watching a guy score 50 points a game, and you can say that, for instance, and this is not me defending Kobe or anything like that, but you can't compare Wilt's 100 points that you didn't see to Kobe's 81 points that you did see. That's just ridiculous. You're
Yeah,
taking the number
but I can't.
and you're
I
making a crazy leap.
But I also can't disrespect it because I didn't see it.
No,
And
it's not
when
disrespect.
somebody says something like they were playing against mechanics and plumbers, that's disrespect. Whether or
It's
not you're directly doing it or not, it's disrespect.
no,
If
no, no,
I
no.
tell you, if you if there's a piece of art that you did, right, and I didn't see you do it, I didn't see how you did it, I wasn't around when you did it at a time that was whatever, right, and maybe you had access to some sort of materials that some artist today doesn't have access to, right, but you did this image and it came out a certain way, and maybe you did it on some sort of canvas that creates some sort of look that isn't available now for whatever reason, right? If another artist is sitting up and looking at this art that you did and goes, well, you know, working on the finest piece of canvas, I bet he did do something like that. I bet he did. I bet he did produce a piece that looks like that. It's no way in the world for that not to be disrespectful to the artist in some way. And it's not to say that there's some portion of what you're saying or some portion of the concept that you're presenting that isn't valid. It's just that if you say that about an artist's work, if you feel the necessity to put it into that context, and then you also you also accompany it with a little bit of a backhanded slap, which is what saying somebody playing against mechanics and plumbers is.
Can I
It's
address that real
insulting.
quick?
It's insulting to the
Now,
artist.
I could break down why that comparison doesn't work, but the bottom line with it
It
is
absolutely works. You could
it
break it down, but it works.
no,
It
it
works.
all right. So now I'm forced to break it down why it doesn't work.
It works.
The component of art, because that critic would be stupid. Because the thing about art is that it's all about the design of the art. That's what art is about. And design doesn't change depending on what materials you're using. If the artist had the artistic ability to design that, you can definitively say that they were a great artist no matter what era they was, which is why art is literally timeless. Whether it's a wood chip thing or cave painting or done on canvas or done on a computer, it's very, very easy to judge artists because it's very similar to a story, which is design based, whereas basketball is competition based. So the relativity is much more important in basketball than it is in something that is design oriented. And hold on, because people keep talking about this line of like he was playing against chain smokers and mechanics. The reason people say that is it's actually for a very good reason, even though it's a joke and it's extreme. But the very good reason for that is when you are one of the best paid people on the entire planet, it's different than when it's your side thing. And basketball was literally a side thing for NBA players in aspects of Wilt's era. There are literally guys who were like, yeah, I taught in the off season.
Absolutely. And
There are
here's the thing.
literally guys who were like,
Here,
I was a mechanic in the off season.
I
I
guess
missed games because I had
I
to
guess
work.
I guess my point is when you offer context to something, there's a way to offer context to it without insulting the person who is in the advantageous spot, right?
I
And
understand,
and,
but yeah.
and that's what I'm saying. When a person says, "Oh, you were playing against chain," he was playing. Yeah, sure he did. Playing against chain smokers and plumbers. If I was to say, yeah, you know what, those numbers were amazing. The competition level was a little bit different, there because there wasn't as many big guys or blah 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 blah. Then that's a little different because but if when it's overly dismissive and overly simplified, which is what I think that's an example of,
I
that's when
see.
I
And
think it.
and here's the thing. I'm not overly simplifying it though. I'm saying the truth that we don't have the
Well,
context.
we don't have the context to know that they were people. You said chain smokers. How we know that they was chain smokers?
There are some people that they know smoked, yeah.
I mean, this is my point.
Smoking was more
This
popular
is
back then.
this is
No,
what
like
I'm
no, no. I
saying.
mean, I mean, like literally, if you watch, and I know it's funny because I know you're into like documentaries and stuff. When you watch some of those documentaries, they have crazy stories about guys who were
I
like,
and I'm not saying
"Yeah,
I am
I had to work
totally
on a railroad and miss the
I
playoffs." Like,
I 100%
that's why
agree
the
that.
joke comes from a real place. People aren't just saying that to demean people. Now, here's the thing. I agree with you that that could be demeaning. What I'm saying is this simple fact. You cannot talk about Wilt Chamberlain the same way you can talk about a guy like Shaquille O'Neal.
I believe that you
You
can
have to
because they
acknowledge.
both have the same responsibility. Their responsibility is to dominate the era that they're in. Because it's unfair to say to Wilt, dude, you are literally built like an athlete that is commonplace, or I shouldn't say commonplace, more commonplace 25 years after you lived, literally. So you are literally a model that literally won't be more common for another 20 years. Okay. And here you are with this body and with this athletic prowess that we won't see on a regular basis in the NBA for 20-25 years, even longer than that, to be honest. And to say you can't give him props for being
No,
ahead of
no.
his
So
time.
hold on.
That's what
You
I'm saying.
saying
But see, it's
no?
like
I'm not saying you can't
it's
give him props.
it
I've
it's like
said
talking out of
definitive.
both sides of the mouth then.
It's not talking about both sides of the mouse. What did I say? I said this is not about criticizing Wilt. This is about being honest about how much you know about Wilt. When you've seen every minute that person A has played, and most of someone else's play has happened in a context that you cannot say you actually saw. You have to acknowledge, I'm comparing legacies, but I'm not comparing direct on the court. I really can judge this player.
Well, I mean, that's
I'm
always
talking about the
I
I'm
mean, to be
saying
honest
putting it
with
in
you, if I've
context.
never seen a player play against another player, I really can't definitively say this guy can get the best of this guy, because I can try to deduce that, oh, okay, well, he played against this guy. So since this guy's from this same era, then I can say that he probably could do this. You
But
can't
there's levels to that.
definitively say that either,
There,
because unless I've
there's right
seen
for sure.
if unless I've seen Michael Jordan go head up with LeBron James, I can't say who would have the edge. I can't say that, but I
That's
can
totally
say,
fair.
right. But so it just gets to the point of how much benefit of the doubt do you want to give someone,
Well, it's
and
not.
how.
Hold on. The question is not whether or not Wilt was great. The question is not whether or not Wilt would be a perennial All Star in today's league. The question is, when you are making your lists, can you make your list with the same level of credibility despite how much you know about the players? And seeing someone play for their entire life is definitively much more information than not seeing someone play for most of their career.
No, I wouldn't disagree with that. But what I'm saying, all my point is, I'm not saying anything about somebody talking about Wilt as if they've seen him, or talking about him in the same breath as somebody that they've watched every day. That's like two totally separate things. What I'm saying is, when people dismiss what he's done and say
But I've
you
never done
did
that.
it, but you are doing that when you say something about somebody doing something against chain
No,
smokers.
no,
That's
I'm
exactly
not.
what
Hold
that
on, hold on.
is.
Okay, let's go black and white. Ironically, right? Was Wilt's level of competition far, far inferior to post merger NBA competition?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. That's
But
it.
what I'm
That's what I'm
saying,
saying.
but I'm not arguing that. What I'm saying is, if you can't say that, okay, because you played against inferior competition, right? Then that automatically means that I can't that I have to say, okay, I have to insult you. That's
No,
what I'm saying.
what was the insult I gave to Wilt?
Because if you say that if somebody accomplished something great, right? They did something great.
We talking about
And
Wilt. Don't go general. What am I? How did I insult Wilt?
that's what I'm saying. If he did something great, Wilt did something great.
Sure.
His career, his accomplishments, the statistics, the things that he put up in his basketball career were great. If you contextualize that by saying that you did it in an environment that was packed with, and you use a term like chain smokers, it's I don't care how you spin it. That's going to be insulting to the person.
That's not. It's not insult. I didn't say anything about. But that's the truth of it. You just said. You just agreed to me in black and
I
white.
said
The
that I
level of
did say the
competition
level of
was
competition was.
far, far inferior.
I
Like
believe
far,
that.
far. Not a little
Well,
worse. A
I
lot
put it like
worse.
this. I think that the level of athleticism was drastically decreased, but I also think that there is something to be said for fewer teams, because I think that fewer teams gives you less watered down competition. You play against the best guys on a nightly basis.
I
But
think the
again,
amount, and the ABA proves this. I think the amount of NBA quality athletes that were alive and living in the world and
mhm,
not playing in the NBA
mhm,
far outweighs the lesser teams. Because right now, every single person who is able to get to the NBA is trying to be in the NBA.
mhm,
Every person out of almost 8 billion people we have on the planet internationally who can be an NBA player is, for the most part, desperately trying to be in the NBA. So that by far counterbalances all of the various different reasons that Wilt was playing against the competition he was playing against. Now, this doesn't change Wilt's greatness, because Wilt did not have the ability to pull all of the NBA talent in there. And by all of the stories, it wasn't like, Kareem played against Wilt and was like, no, he was a chump. He's like, no, he's a great player,
Like,
right?
yeah. And if I had got this dude in his 20s, I might have got that work. That's I might have got that work. And
Maybe, maybe not. We don't know.
maybe
It depends. It
we
depends on
don't
a lot
know.
of
We
things. It
don't
depends
know.
on it,
We
it
don't
depends on the
know.
era. It
We
depends on the
don't know.
rules. We
We
don't.
don't
It's
know.
what.
Speaking of
Hold on.
rules, they
What you just
changed
said.
them for
What you
him.
just hold on. What you just said. We don't know.
We
And
don't
I'm
know.
saying those three words is part of the discussion. There's a we do know era of basketball, which starts roughly post merger when everybody was better paid, when everything was televised, and we do know everything about the players. And then there's the players who were great,
But
but we don't know.
so here's my thing. So where does that stop and end? Because you're willing to push it back to the Jordan era because that's what you grew up watching,
No, no,
right?
no. I'm
But
willing to push it back. I said
I mean,
post
what you're willing to push it
merger.
back. Just put it like you're willing to push it back further to post merger, right?
Post merger.
But there are a lot of people right now who are putting Michael Jordan's era in the same era that in the same void in the same box that you're putting the Wilt Chamberlain era
But they're idiots
in.
because
Okay, so they're just wrong for doing the same thing that
there's
you're doing.
they're not doing the same thing you're doing. If I had every minute of Wilt's career from high school
But
to
we don't have
now,
every minute of Mike's career.
let's say every minute is a very slight exaggeration and you're picking at my words. What I'm saying is
But
if I
I
had
mean, it's
no
we
no
don't
hold, let me
have
finish.
all of it.
You have the greater majority of Michael Jordan's career, and you don't need to watch every minute of someone playing. I'm saying that in the extreme cases of LeBron James, the reason you can't take this argument further and further to the future, which is your question, what if someone 20 years from now says you don't know this about
No, that's
LeBron
not what
James?
I'm saying. That's not what
But
I'm saying.
the reason is because there's so much overwhelming evidence of LeBron James's positive and negative qualities as a basketball player that if someone has any questions about it, I can just hand them footage. If you have questions about Michael Jordan, I can just keep handing you footage.
But you can
If I
keep
ask,
handing me footage of him playing against those people, but you can't
I can
hand me
no,
footage against
hold on.
against him playing against the star of 2030.
Stop, hold on. I can also hand you the footage of the people he was playing against, which is where the
But
chain
none of
smoker
them are
thing that
playing
you keep
against
talking
the
about.
stars of 2030.
Right. And if you're saying that someone is going to say, no matter how much footage you give me, I don't know, I'm not going to acknowledge this guy's greatness, that's a completely different argument than me saying we don't have the footage.
It doesn't
You're
matter
conflating two
that
different arguments. You're
no,
conflating the
no,
denial
not
of
at
footage
all. Not
with
no,
the
not
not
at all. It's
having of footage.
what we're talking about is the concept of not knowing. It doesn't matter why you don't know. It's
No,
that you don't know.
I'm saying what we know. I'm saying I do not fully know what Wilt's game looks like in an environment that is at all similar to today. Because, and this is why I talk about post merger, because post merger, while the NBA has had some rule changes and some improvements here and there, by and large, it is mostly the same game. The differences are fairly small because post merger, real quick, post merger is when
Professional
we
basketball players would disagree with you.
post merger is when we I'm saying overall. I'm not saying there are no differences, but and there are some rule changes that are bigger than others, like the hand check and stuff like that. They're saying that hey, if you could hand check today, blah blah blah. I think it's totally valid. How would LeBron James and Steph Curry look in the hand check era? That's a valid question,
We don't know. And we
and we
have
don't
the
know.
footage. And we have the footage.
But what I'm saying about Wilt Chamberlain is that there's so much of a greater environmental change and so much less footage that the we don't know is in all caps. And I'm just saying in a discussion, I acknowledge that all of the players that I haven't really seen play, I don't know who they're playing against, or I can definitively say that the guy that he's playing against would not be in today's NBA. Definitively.
So
100%.
what about the people who are living today who saw Wilt Chamberlain play, maybe played against Wilt Chamberlain and coached today, and they still say that Wilt Chamberlain would be able to compete, and they don't throw out what he did during that time because of the competition that he played against. They don't throw any of that stuff out. They keep all of that in, and they say, I'm telling you, I saw him. This is what he'd be capable of doing. What about those people? What about them?
First of all, You are asking me to argue a point that I did not make.
No, what I'm saying
You're
is
saying, what if the people who played against Wilt said the same thing you
so
just said
no,
5 minutes ago?
what I'm
That Wilt
saying,
could play today and be really good.
what I'm saying, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this takes away the I don't know, because these are people who do know.
No, it doesn't take away the I don't know at all.
How? They know, they saw it. You're saying that we don't have the footage. The footage is the big deal. These people don't have to have the footage because they saw it. They played
because
against them.
because those are extremely biased opinions. Because and now me no, I don't even know why you're laughing, because this is like the number one thing here.
Oh no.
Isaiah Thomas, who knows damn well that Michael Jordan was better than LeBron James, refuses to say so because Michael Jordan kept him off the dream team. This is like a
That
plain
might be right.
fact.
It might be right. I mean,
And
that
so,
for Isaiah, but you can't say that to
no, hold on.
everybody.
Hold on. It's not that because everybody doesn't have a unanimous opinion about Wilt Chamberlain. There's some people that are like Kareem was better. There's some people like
I'm talking
Shaq was more dominant.
I don't
Some people
hear
say
anybody.
arguably.
I've never heard anybody from his era say, people who saw him play or played against him, that would imply or would feel the need to throw out, oh yeah, but the majority of the people there, they were much smaller. They were this. I haven't heard that.
I've heard plenty of people acknowledge
I'm
that the
talking about from
competition.
his era.
I've heard
Who
people from
saw
his
him?
era say that the level of athleticism in the NBA is greater now, and they would caveat it with say, "I would be really interested to see Wilt Chamberlain play in today's NBA game to see what he would do." But they don't know if he would score 50 points a night.
No, nobody knows that.
Do you think Wilt Chamberlain would score 50 points a night?
I do not.
That's my point.
I do not think. I mean, no, I don't think that. I mean, like I said, I've never said that the lack of 7-footers in the league overall, the lack of athletes in the league overall wouldn't play a factor. I've never said that. But what I'm saying is, Wilt Chamberlain was in the NBA when he was in the NBA.
Sure.
He put up the numbers he put up when he was there. He dominated for someone who was like, I put it like this. When I went to see, and this is not an era thing or what have you, but this is, to me, if you are playing in a situation where you are so far above everybody that you're playing against, I expect to see a certain level of domination, right? So the first time I saw Kevin Garnett play, I went to see him play in high school. He went to Farragut here in Chicago. So and this was the first time anybody was talking about coming straight out of high school, like since Moses Malone in the 70s, right? So it was somewhat unheard of at the time because nobody had done it for over 20 years. So when I went to see him play, I was like, I don't know what I'm about to see, but I know one thing. If he is really going to be able to make this jump that they're talking about, he better make these guys look like he's literally playing against his sons.
Mm-hmm.
And he made those guys look like he was playing against their sons,
his
sons. So to me, that's what I see when I look at Wilt. When I look at when I look at the numbers, when I look at what I see on, I'm telling you, you should really look at this YouTube channel. I bet you there's way more Chamberlain footage here than you think. There's a lot there, tons of it, almost like full games worth of stuff. There's a lot there, right? It's plentiful. So when I look at that and I look at the numbers, to me, it tells me this dude was dominating like he was ahead of his time. So yes, these guys may have been smaller. Yes, these guys may have been less athletic, but I'm not going to throw that up when I talk about his greatness, because he, to me, was doing about what a guy today, like if I took who's the best?
Giannis.
If I took Giannis, I don't know. I think Giannis is probably a better athlete than Wilt. If he ain't better, he probably, I don't know if he's he's not as strong as Wilt, but length,
really strong.
Yeah, length and
strong right now.
You know, but like if I put DeMarcus Cousins, not as fast as, I don't think DeMarcus Cousins is as fast as Wilt, and I know he doesn't jump as high as Wilt. But if I put DeMarcus Cousins in the 60s, I believe DeMarcus Cousins is going to score somewhere 45, 48 points a game. I think something like that at that time, because of just the size. But Wilt did that.
Awesome.
Wilt did that. You know what I'm
Awesome
saying?
that he did
So
that. And
what
when you
I'm
talk about,
saying is I can't I'm not going to put that up when I'm talking about him, because to me it diminishes what he did. And I
and
don't think there's any reason to diminish what he did
see,
because of the
and
level of domination.
this is the point where we're getting caught up, because when you say diminishes, you're making an emotional argument, and you're making an emotional argument of a point that I'm not making. I'm not saying Wilt's accomplishments don't count, and I'm not even saying that Wilt couldn't possibly be the best player in today's league. I don't think that's true necessarily, but I don't know that it's not true either. That goes into the I don't know file. What I'm saying is, when we talk about players that we truly know their game and we're having a conversation about game, it's dishonest to bring in a historic conversation in that. There's historic conversations where you know what they did, but not how they did it or what it meant at that time or how it happened and blah, blah, blah. But you have to acknowledge, hey, great is great. And he played when he played and he killed it. So he deserves to be acknowledged for that. And then there's a, okay, that conversation's done. You're talking about who would you rather have on your team? Well, you can't take these numbers and these stories and these myths and these legends and compare it to a guy who, A, played in an environment that was, even by the worst comparisons, much more similar to today's environment. And you actually either saw it, or if you chose to do the work, could go and see it. Now you're talking about your actual opinion of watching them play, watching them make decisions, watching them deal with adversity, watching them fight competition who is much closer to them than Wilt's competition was. I'm saying those circumstances are drastic enough to draw a line and say, well, we're having a different conversation now.
Yeah, I don't know. I do. I am putting the definitely the humanity in it, because I am putting myself in this situation, and I am thinking about, like, if this was me, if I put up 50 a game, and I put up 50 a game against the best people they put out in front of me. This is what I did. Like, would I want somebody to say, yeah, but you did it against chain smokers and you did it against plumbers? I am doing that. Yes, I am.
Right.
I am
And
actually
and what I'm saying
absolutely doing that.
is, take I'm saying I acknowledge those feelings with all due respect. That's not the conversation I'm having, and that's not even the point that I'm making, because that point is usually coming behind. That's why Shaq's better than Wilt, and I'm not making that argument. I'm saying I don't know what Wilt would be like in a post-merger era NBA. I do not know what he would be like when everybody around him could run. Not everybody, but most people around him can either run, jump, shoot, dribble, better than he can and all of his teammates can, right? I don't know what that
Yeah.
environment's like. I don't know what Wilt looks, for instance, I don't know what Wilt looks like trying to guard a pick and roll with Russell Westbrook and Steven Adams. Like,
Yeah,
you know, I don't know what that I don't know what he
honest,
looked like trying to guard
honestly,
Steph Curry and
but
Kevin
here's
Durant.
my thing. He's the only guy. He's the only guy that I really think that like, I'm not gonna say it doesn't matter, but I think that Wilt is the rarest of the rare type of a player who I yeah, yeah. I mean, like, there's no substitute for the fact that the game runs outside more so than it runs inside out now, right? There's no substitute for that. So unless we're shooting threes, he's still not going to be what he was then, because the game isn't played the same way it was played
Well,
then.
here's
And
here's the other side of that. Let's take that for a second, right? Here's the flip side of that, and which is why I'm saying I'm not insulting Will. I'm saying I don't know, and I change the. And the more you know about somebody, the better you talk about them. The more informed you are when you talk about them. And if a whole bunch of players are in the I'm super informed about them category, and then other players are in the there's no way for me to be as informed about them category, then I draw the line. That's what I'm saying. Because the flip side to this is, suppose Wilt in today's era plays more like Giannis. He was
yeah,
fast. He
yeah,
could run,
I mean, I don't know if from what I've seen,
because
which is
Giannis didn't start like this.
Yeah, but Giannis was always running guard, like even like when he was a kid in
I hear
Greece.
you, but I'm just saying,
Yeah,
suppose.
yeah. I
You know,
mean,
Brooke Lopez wasn't shooting threes 5 years ago. Now he's one of the best. He's probably the best 3-point shooting big man in the league.
yeah, he probably is.
So
I
we
just
don't know what Wilt would have done to his game in the modern era. Wilt could have been the perfect center in today's era. Wilt could have been, you know, not as good as Shaq in the '90s. We don't know. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And
yeah.
but
I feel like
that's not
if
trashing him to say that
no.
I don't.
No, I don't think that that part is trash. Like I said, the insulting of the competition, I think, is what trashes him.
Oh no, all day. Those players. You here's the thing. You talk about talking two sides of your mouth. You admitted full stop that those players were far inferior to
Yeah.
today's players. And you even said you don't think Wilt would have averaged the numbers that he averaged if
No,
he was in.
I don't think he gets 50.4. And part of the reasons I don't think he gets 50.4 because he's just not going to get the ball down there that much. And then yes, it is the fact that they're bigger guys. They're bigger guys down there. But I don't think he needs to average 50.4 to me to prove the all-time greatness. And to me, that's what the conversation is about. It's
But I
about
no,
all-time greatness.
Yo, B, how many times in this conversation did I say he would be a perennial All Star in any era?
No, but I don't have a
How do I take
I don't have a
how do I
problem.
possibly how do I possibly take all time greatness off the table as a point of debate in
Never,
a conversation?
never, never. But what I'm saying is, to me, to me, it's saying two different things. Because if I tell you, if you like you said, I don't know about, I don't have enough footage. I haven't seen him do this. I haven't seen him do that. The only thing you really have is the numbers, right? That's the only thing you have, right? That's all we got, right? For Wilt
Mm-hmm.
is you got the numbers, right? So if you're not taking him off the table as all of in terms of all-time greatness, and you're basing your willingness to keep him in that conversation on the numbers, right? Then why turn around and then say, oh, well, but it came against chain smokers and blah blah blah. Which, like I said, I don't disagree that the talent level in terms of athletically and size wise was different. I don't disagree that,
And
but
also
it also
this.
sounds like you're saying it's like this bringing it's to me it's a caveat that you're offering there, and I'm not saying it's just to me. I just like I said perhaps it's just the verbiage of it, and like I said, it's not like you specifically. People, I hear it all the time. I hear it all the time. Like yesterday on Twitter, somebody was saying something about it when I posted the stat line, and I'm like, like he did what it was that he was supposed to do. He dominated. And you could whoever they were, they got that work. That's all I know.
and
Whoever they
and
were, they got
and
that work.
there's and this is where the argument gets tricky because people will say something like this player hasn't done this since Wilt Chamberlain, and then someone else will come along and say, and that's how you know there'll never be another Wilt. And this is when I think it gets fuzzy because it we have to acknowledge that the numbers are there. And I would even go a step further and say I think starting this year, in particular this year when the off-ball rules changed, offensive numbers, I'm not going to say they need an asterisk, but we've seen these same players under different rules put up lesser numbers, right? Particularly the shooting numbers.
Right.
So if Steph Curry was to average 35 points a game or something like that, it doesn't take away from the accomplishment. It doesn't take away from his talent. And when there was a little more contact, he still averaged 30 and led the league in scoring once. But that extra 5 points, we can say, well, they were rule changes, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to compare it to Kobe's 35 a game in this era because Kobe was going to the basket and laying up around people, dunking on people, hitting people in the post in an era where they could still grab him and elbow him a little bit, but there was no hand checking. So I'm not going to compare that exactly to Jordan's era where they was trying to kick his ass,
Mm-hmm.
literally trying to physically kick his ass, and he was dunking on him anyway. That doesn't mean that this player is better than that player, but we're just acknowledging that you shouldn't go too far with the direct comparisons. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And
I
so
mean,
And the thing is,
But you
there's
know what? I
real quick.
guess I say the same thing that you say when I say when like I would never make a statement like, well, that's why there will be another Will Chamberlain. No, I would never say that. I would
Right.
never say that because because of the era difference. You can't say that, right? But I just like perhaps it's only semantics for me, right?
Well, but here's why it's not semantics to me. And here's the thing, because there's different kinds of all-time great conversations. And the one that I'm personally most interested in is who would you take? You know what I'm saying? But for me to have a real conversation about who would I take,
Yeah, I can't. I can say that. I can't say that for now. I couldn't. I couldn't definitively say, "Oh yeah, I would take Wood over everybody." Only people who can say that is people who saw him play.
right?
Like if you saw him play
Well,
and
and
you've seen these guys play today and you've coached those guys, if you still say that you would definitively take Wilt, you know what I'm saying? If you still say that, then I give you I gotta give some credence to what you say because of the experience. You know,
for me that's a case by case, because some people are
well, yeah.
very
If I think you're just
protective of their
Isaiah,
era. Some
yeah. If I
people are
think you're
very
Isaiah, then
nostalgic.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a case by case thing. And I'm willing to listen to the argument, but the argument has to go deep. That's my thing. Because the whole point of what I'm saying is a discussion about Shaq or well, any, post 78 big man can get very deep. You can really look at the guy's footwork, you can look at his form, you can look at who he has surrounded him, you know what I'm saying? And you can look at his college career, who he played against, all in a very, very, very deep way. If I can't, if you're gonna make an argument, you got to go deep like that. You can't just be like, oh, you should have been there because
no, yeah, yeah. No, I'm
he
never
took a
one.
quarter off the backboard.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
never
like,
one for the
I just
simpler.
watched Giannis take the ball off the scoring thing,
Yeah, no,
and
I never,
like
I
he took it off
never.
the shot clock. What you
Yeah, I would never like. You always got to bring a thought out, a well thought out argument. I'm not gonna just say, oh yeah, yeah, because you were there. I mean, because I mean, to be honest with you, man, my dad used to say crazy stuff like that all the time about people, and I'd be like, Dad, that don't make no sense. Like, no,
yeah.
no,
And the truth of the matter is, going both ways, today's players benefit from all of the, you know, um, the advancements and creativity that the older players made, both inside and outside of the sport, which I think, going to this point, how much they're paid and the fact that the NBA has the pick of the litter when it comes to human beings coming to their league, that's a big factor.
right.
They all benefit from that. And the older guys benefit from, well, I wasn't playing against a team of, just how athletic is a team of Russell Westbrook, Terrence Ferguson, Paul George, Jerry Grant, Hamidou Diallo. Like, you're literally talking about every single one of these guys. If you put them in a time machine and put them back then, people would have been like, what the like, and they're all on the same team. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like, and some of them aren't even starters. Like, it's so crazy how different the competition is, that each side has a reason that they benefit, and each side has a reason that it's a little unfair to them. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And I'm just acknowledging that there's a group of players, there's a line drawn in NBA history. It's called the merger, where everything before then is such a different environment that I'm not talking about a guy's game. I'm just looking at the numbers and going historically. But if we're gonna have a real conversation about game, I'm not including those guys because this isn't the history report. And those
yeah.
is lies too.
I can't exclude them because they still play basketball, and I would like to look at what they do and try to imagine how that would translate, because I don't think it's really that much different than saying, okay, how would LeBron play in the 80s and the 90s when the game was far more physical?
Mm-hmm.
I never saw him play in those times, but I'm looking at how big and strong he is, and I'm looking at, what kind of a competitor he is. And I'm saying, okay, what do I believe physically? I can see he can play the game at any level because he's got the size. Now, if you don't have the size, then now we're talking something different. So see, that's my thing, I guess, with Wilt. If Wilt wasn't 7'1", and I know you're not saying that he couldn't play today, and so I'm not saying that. And I know you're not saying that he wouldn't potentially be a perennial all-star. So I'm not saying that. Never. I knew that from the beginning of what you were saying. But what I'm saying is, to me, that's what it comes down to, because the only way I'm bringing up who he played against is if I think, and I'm not saying that that's what you're doing, but the only way I'm bringing up who he's playing against is if I think that it wouldn't translate. And
Okay.
so it starts
Yeah.
at, to me, it starts at size. From a size standpoint, do I think you had the size to play with these other guys who I've seen play? And so
Yeah.
that he checks that box. Do I think you're athletic enough to play with the guys that I see today? He absolutely checks that box. Do I think you had the skill level to play with the guys these days? From what I see, which, like I said, if you look at what I was talking about, it's a lot there. There's a lot there. There's more here than you can find for a decent amount of players, right? If I, and like I said, I won't ever really know unless I got a chance to see Wilt play against Shaq, unless I got a chance to see Wilt play against Dwight Howard or whatever. But I can still say with some level of understanding of basketball and the understanding of what it takes to be successful and what it takes to be successful in today's game, I'm looking at Wilt and I'm like, yeah, I can totally see how he's still a monster. Maybe not 50.4 points a game monster, but I can
That's the
totally
key, though.
see.
See, and
But
that's
I
my
can totally
point.
see.
Is it's not a knock to him to acknowledge that there's good reason to be doubtful that those truly over the top accomplishments would happen if he played in a different era. And I think when you talk about big men and point guards in particular,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's a difference when you talk about the 90s and today. Because in the 90s, point guards were largely coached to throw the ball to the big guy. And that was what your game was supposed to be. And today, point guards are expected to score and create. That's what your role is supposed to be. Back in the 90s, the big guy was supposed to score around the basket, rebound, block shots. Today, the big guy is preferred if you can shoot, defend the pick and roll, and finish around the basket.
Yeah, definitely, just definitely a different. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that as great as Kareem is, I think Kareem would, he would struggle to be as dominant, especially as a scorer. I think he'd be just as dominant as a shot blocker and a rebounder. But I think as a scorer, he ain't getting the touches. You know what I'm saying?
I well, that's where we get into the territory because Joel Embiid is scoring just fine,
Yeah, but
and
he's not scoring 30 a game.
but I think Kareem. There's good evidence to say that Kareem's better than Joel Embiid.
I
So,
think he's better than everybody, but I'm saying I just don't know that he's
well,
getting.
that's the key because here's the situation, and this is where the conversation is interesting to me. Like I think this is an interesting conversation because you can look at a guy like Kareem and say, well, he's a singular case. He's not a general case, right? So we can't compare Kareem to other big men in the league because those guys just don't have that sky hook. And also, Kareem is one of the most intelligent people to ever play basketball. So you're also looking at a guy that is going to understand the game wherever it is. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So now with those factors in mind, and people don't realize, I know you do, but some people don't, that he wasn't sky hooking from 5 feet away. He was sky hooking from 17 feet
15,
out.
17 feet out, man.
Crazy watching him throw that ball over his head from a step inside the 3 point line. So, you know, it's an interesting thing to dissect it and say, man, would he be that? Would he average that and all this other stuff? And it is speculation. That's part of the fun of basketball. In the case of Wilt, I think it's a pretty good case you could make that the accomplishments that get attached to his name would not have happened in a more competitive environment.
Yeah,
This
I mean,
doesn't take
I think
away
so.
from his
I would agree.
greatness, but it does take away from the way some people compare his greatness to modern era players. And that's all I'm saying.
I guess like my thought is like I think that there is proportional, like there's a proportionate greatness to certain people, right? It's like it's to me part of what makes him great, so great, and part of what makes him this giant, almost like mythical type of a presence is that he did dominate the way he did. Because to me it's more, to me the fact that the guys that he was playing against were so far beneath him athletically, the fact that that was the case to me only accentuates the greatness. Because to me his biggest quality is being ahead of his time, to me.
I agree with that, but there's a but though. And it really comes from the fact that the NBA players were not paid enough, that all of the athletes of even that time were trying to be NBA players. Everybody who was eligible to be in the NBA wasn't training the way they are now, where anybody who even looks like they could possibly sniff the NBA is being picked up 12, 13, 14 years old, sometimes 9 years old, to start to be groomed to be an NBA player. And back then, if even if that part was changed, if everybody at that time was paid the equivalent of like $1 million and everybody even wanted to be an NBA player, it would mean a little bit more to me. However, when we talk about Wilt specifically, it has to be acknowledged that he was an Olympic class athlete with giant hands, a crazy wingspan,
Yeah.
ran, jumped,
Yeah.
strong, frequently said, somebody said this when he was still alive. They said, yeah, there's 7 feet and there's 7 feet. Because I've been next to Patrick Ewing and he's tall, but you can kind of say he looks 6'10, 6'11. When you next to Wilt,
It's
you
just
feel like
different.
you next to a giant.
Yeah,
Now,
and
and
I'm just saying the dude was so far ahead of his time
I'm
from a
with you.
physical standpoint, and that to me is really the part of it that makes the greatness, is because it's almost like sometimes I wish, like I'm like, man, I wish that I could be a have a grown man's mind and go back and play basketball when I was a kid. I was
Mhm.
like, there's so much stuff that I would do differently playing ball or just in school, period. Wilt is like if you took somebody from today
And just put him
and
back.
dropped them in the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to me, that's the greatness.
And here's the key, Brian. And this is why, and obviously, it's all love here, so I'm never upset. But the reason I get fired up about being pulled into this argument of insulting Wilt, I'm saying no. But the circumstances of Wilt
Yeah.
are basically a Wilt only world. And Wilt kind of has to be discussed in a class by himself, and be very careful when you start comparing for exactly the reason you said. It's almost like the guy was put through a time machine,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's
And
literally
that,
like if you took an American Giannis,
yeah.
walked him through a time machine, and he
And
shows up
said
back then and just dunks on everybody and sleeps with every woman on the North American continent.
20,000. 20,000. I mean, like, cause I everything you're saying, I don't disagree with for the most part.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't want to say, yeah, but I just want to say, yeah, wow. And I know all of that. I do. But I want to say, yeah, wow. And just leave it at wow. Because I mean, not leave it at wow, because I'm not gonna act like it's not the case, right? I see it, right? But it's like I'm more impressed with like, because like I remember like, somebody told me, he was like, Walt Bellamy was almost the same type of athlete as Will Chamberlain. He was like, Walt Bellamy was Like if Wilt Chamberlain wasn't Wilt Chamberlain, Walt Bellamy would have been Wilt Chamberlain because he was like that kind of an athlete. But Walt Bellamy wasn't Wilt Chamberlain. You know, he wasn't. You know, Walt Bellamy is 6'11", 240, chiseled up out of granite. I mean, just looked like he got dropped out of this era into there, like just physically, right? But he wasn't Wilt Chamberlain. And it's just like the dude.
Well, and that's why I talk about game, right?
Yeah.
Because one thing that I don't think gets discussed enough in basketball is there's an element of game that goes beyond dribbling, shooting, passing. There's an element of just knowing what to do at the right time. I talk about this a lot with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Because I think aside from the hand size, that's the biggest difference. Is Michael just knew what to do all the time. I think Dwayne Wade's actually better at it than Kobe Bryant is. Yeah. Kobe is just much more disciplined and skilled than Dwayne.
And he's bigger than Dwayne.
Yeah, he's bigger. But I think it's really, I think even if he was 6'4", Kobe would have still had.
Kobe would be great because he would not settle for anything less.
And so that's the thing. Kobe's a psychopath, right?
Yes, he's a maniac.
Yeah. So and same thing. That's an element of Kobe that translates to any era.
Any era. Oh, Kobe would be a great player in any era, and it's much because of here as it is anywhere else.
And to go back to Wilt, the reason I say I think he would still be an all-star. Look, they didn't shoot back then. He didn't need the same level of post-up moves and footwork. He didn't have to. I don't think he had to defend anybody who even had a crossover, right? Let alone is doing crossover behind the back between a roll and a pick and roll. You know what I'm saying? He never had to ice a pick and roll in the same way that, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was just different. It was such a different league. But when you talk about game, here's the thing about Wilt. He loved being great. He loved being great.
He loved being dominant.
Right. So there's an element of the conversation when you talk about Wilt as an individual, not comparing him to today's game, where you can use your imagination as a basketball fan, get excited and say, what would be different about Wilt Chamberlain if he played now? Which is why I say it's possible he could be the best player in the league right now.
Here's what I think.
Possible.
I think
because he might have done his work to do that.
I think he would be the best center in the league. I don't think he'd be 50.4 points a game best center in the league, but I think he'd be the best center in the league on the sheer on rebounding, athleticism, shot blocking, and passing, and being able to finish by the basket. And I'm telling you, I don't think any center in the league would affect the game more than him. Now, I don't think that he would be fantastic defending the pick and roll, but I think he would be better than average because especially young Wilt, especially big fat butt headband Wilt, that would be a little different because he was 34 years old and he started to gain weight. But young legs this big Wilt, yeah, I think the way Wilt ran the floor then, I think that Wilt defends the pick and roll without too much of a problem.
Yeah.
Because of the length and the athleticism. But I also think that once he gets it down there, I mean, you put Wilt in the middle of the Golden State Warriors and you put him as their starting center and watch and see what happened with 4 shooters and Wilt. It's going to be a problem today, tomorrow, yesterday, whenever. Because
and I am not in any way disagreeing with that.
And see, I guess that's just my whole thing. I just say, like, I'm really a person about like giving people, especially, you know, giving people their props. And you know, I understand what you're saying. You said I'm not giving him his props. I'm just saying them dudes suck. That he played against.
Yo, serious, like legit. Like you watch some of them games, you see dudes that tell the truth. You watch people play against Wilt and be like, I'm better than that guy.
Now, you know what? I ain't gonna say, I'm not gonna say that I haven't thought about the fact that at 6'5", could I have played in the NBA in 1960?
Right, of course.
That's like, because I feel like maybe I could have, because I mean, first of all, I'm not horrible. You know what I'm saying? So I think maybe, maybe I could have.
And if you talk to one of those guys right now, they probably slap you right across both your lips.
They probably say, no, you couldn't. They say, no, you couldn't.
Right.
No way in the world you could.
How dare you?
Right.
And
No way you could.
maybe they right, maybe you
Maybe they
right.
wrong.
I don't know, but when I look at some of them guys dribbling the ball with one hand, running around in circles, I'm like, hey, yeah, I don't know about that, buddy. I mean, you
Yeah, I don't
can't
know.
even
I don't know.
put the ball between your legs without hitting your Converse's, homie. So I'm not really scared of you right now.
That this would have been the longest segment in
Yo,
At Me Bro history.
is this recording?
It is.
You need to put this up.
Yeah,
Is Wilt Chamberlain overrated?
Here,
Here, put up. Is Wilt Chamberlain
yeah,
overrated? At Me Bro
yeah,
after this, behind the scenes.
yeah, definitely. All right, let's just jump through these hoops real quick.
Yeah, we get through this real quick.
Yeah.
Let them know why we going so fast.